So you want to take your business global. You've got the product, you've got the plan. But what if I told you the toughest barrier you're going to face isn't a law or a language, but culture? Today, we're going to unpack this invisible wall and why it's the absolute key to global success.
I mean, think about it for a second. You could have a brilliant idea, a flawless financial model, but you launch in a new country and crickets. It just doesn't land. Why is that? What are these invisible tripwires that even the smartest companies seem to stumble over? Well, a major business review we're diving into today puts it perfectly. International business isn't really about products or money. At its core, it's the study of distances. And, you guessed it, the most important ones have nothing to do with miles or kilometers.
This right here is the whole game. It's like an iceberg. Above the water, you've got the obvious stuff we all plan for, right? Geography, different economies, language barriers. But it's what's lurking beneath the surface, those deep, hidden cultural norms and unwritten rules that can totally sink your entire operation.
And that brings us to our big idea for today: cultural distance. It's the official term for how different one country's shared values and norms are from another's. And this isn't just about knowing whether to bow or shake hands. This distance affects every single strategic decision a company makes. Okay, so how in the world do you measure something so invisible? That's the million-dollar question. And it's exactly what a team of researchers set out to figure out. They decided to do a massive review of the entire field to see what a decade's worth of research could really tell us. And when I say massive, I mean it. They didn't just cherry-pick a few studies. They systematically broke down 118 of the most important papers on the topic. This was a seriously deep dive. They also focused on a really specific window of time, from 2009 all the way to 2019. So we're talking about a full decade of modern research, which means the findings are super relevant to the world we're living in right now.
Now, to make sense of all this information, you can't just jump in. You need a system, a map. They used something called the TCCM framework, which is really just a fancy way of saying they had a structured method to analyze everything fairly. Think of it like putting on a special set of analytical glasses.
And these glasses had 4 different lenses. For every single one of those 118 studies, they asked, what's the core theory here? What's the context? Like, which countries are we talking about? What specific characteristics were actually measured? And finally, what was the methodology? How did they study it? So, after all that work, what did they find? Once they put all 118 studies through that process, a clear pattern started to show up. The research all seemed to group together into 8 major themes. And here's the really cool part. Those 8 themes fell neatly into 2 simple buckets: things that drive decisions and the outcomes of those decisions. Suddenly, you start to see a clear picture of cause and effect in global business. Let's break this down. On the left, you've got the drivers. Things like a country's overall national culture or the entrepreneurial mindset of the people in charge. And on the right, you see how those drivers directly lead to outcomes, like how well teams collaborate, what kind of management styles work, and, yep, the bottom line, how the firm actually performs.
But honestly, maybe the most fascinating part of this whole thing wasn't what we know, but what we don't know. The review shined a huge spotlight on the massive blind spots in our understanding.
I mean, just look at this. The overwhelming majority of research out there is focused on developed Western countries. We have shockingly little data on emerging giants like India and China. We're essentially trying to navigate some of the world's biggest markets with a very incomplete map. And that's not the only gap. The review raised other huge questions. Like, in this super connected world, is cultural distance becoming less of a big deal? Are we so focused on spreadsheets that we're missing the real human stories? And maybe most importantly, how do the choices of one person change the entire equation?
So this is what's next. These gaps in our knowledge, they're not failures. They're actually the perfect roadmap for where business leaders and researchers need to focus for the next 10 years.
And if there is one single thing to take away from this entire analysis, it's this: the future is all about the human element. We're moving away from just looking at countries on a map and zooming in on the people inside them. Here's a quote from the paper that says it all. Basically, it says that having a great entrepreneurial mindset doesn't automatically lead to success. The outcome is moderated by individual differences. So what does that mean in plain English? It means things like a person's age, their gender, their unique skills. They can completely change the game. So the crucial point, the big shift, is this.
It's not enough to think about the culture of France anymore. We have to get way more specific. We have to understand the culture, the motivations, and the background of the actual managers, partners, and customers we're dealing with. It's getting personal.
Which leaves us with a final, really big question to think about. As our world gets smaller and more connected every single day, does that deep, messy, human element of culture actually start to matter more, or does it start to fade away? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.